I'm the director here. My wife does help out. She actually takes care of all our social media. So, tiny plug, share all our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm done with that though. No, but so the whole theme of today is in response to love. So we wanted to, do this day in response to the love that you show in your churches, in your communities, in the ministries that you serve in. We wanted this to be a response to that. But also, as I'm up here and talk about that, I want to talk about our response to God's love to us as well. So I got to give a little disclaimer to start off with. When I think of love, I was trying to think of the relationship that I have in my life that I feel the most love, or that I can connect with the most, or really that I feel the most growth towards God in it. It's between my wife and I. So the disclaimer is, it's going to get a little weird, just so you know. Those that know me are fully prepared for how weird I'm going to be. Some of the past summer staffers, but there's your disclaimer. So I'm guessing that everyone in here either has a significant other, or has the idea of possibly having a significant other at some point in time in the future, or at some point in time is thinking about possibly making a decision at one point or another whether or not they want to allow the potential for a significant other to come into their life at some point in time or not. Fair? So, with that being in mind, the thing about significant others, or my wife and I, is that someone always has to make that first move, right? Someone always has to have that initial, commitment to showing that there's an interest there. So what I want to do this morning is I want to kind of go through what it's been like for my wife and I there at the very beginning of how I made the first move, and how God makes his moves to us, showing that he loves us first before we ever make any decision for him. What I want to take a look at to start with is, kind of tell you the story. So the first thing that happens when someone decides to make that first move is they kind of have to have that moment where they start to present, right? That moment where you present this fact that, all right, between two parties, I am about to make something known here that there is interest. So for me, it's kind of a comical story. So my wife and I, in college, we lived across the street from each other. She lived in a house full of girls. I lived across the street in a house full of guys. And our house had a washer and dryer. Their house did not. So, through the massive amount of generosity within our hearts of me and the other gentlemen in our house, we decided to allow my wife and all the other ladies that lived in their home access to our washer and dryer whenever they wanted to. My wife was washing her clothes at our house. So of course, it came through the first time. She had to start the laundry and then she left. She had to come back to move it over and then she left. So at this point in time, I know she's got to come back at least a third time, right? Because those clothes are still here. They're in the dryer. Eventually, they got to get folded and they got to make it back to her house. So here's what I do. Here's how I present myself. So as is supernatural and very common, I just started pacing around our house with a book. Now, it wasn't just any book. It was an ornate, decorated, leather-bound edition of the complete works of William Shakespeare. So this is like a 50-pound book that is made to look pretty on a shelf, right? It is like, and I am just, as if this is casual, as if anyone does this ever, just walking around reading the complete works of William Shakespeare. No, no one does that. Which I studied theater, that's the only reason I even had the book, but I never read it. So as if I just casually flip through the sonnets, and that's the type of person that I am. I've got this thing. And that's how I almost like a peacock kind of presents his flowers. Like, this is me just casually pacing back and forth. And this is how I show that hey, I'm about to show interest, right? So God does the same thing. And here's the cool thing. So starting in Genesis 15, we're bound here. So verse 9, he said to him, so this is God talking to Abraham, right? Just give you the background. 7. Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a male goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought him all these and cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. So let's give you a background real quick. Well, let's finish up, actually. Jump into verse 17. It says, when the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. So let's give a little background as to what's happening. This is a common ritual during this time, right? So what it would be is basically all around you is different kings and rulers of settlements, things like this, because there's no like organized countries quite yet. There's just tribes and villages, and everybody has their king or ruler of some sort, or patriarch of the family, whatever it may be. So this was a common thing of neighboring kingdoms, so to speak. They would have this sacrifice, this cut in half of, these sacrifices, basically, which these things are their livelihood at this point in time, right? You have all the, like, several animals. Can you flip it back to start in 9? We've got a heifer, a goat, a ram, 2 birds. Like, these are things that these people have for their livelihood. And basically what it was is you would cut these in half, and the lesser king or smaller to a neighboring king would do this. They'd sacrifice and cut in half, basically, their livelihood, lay it out, and then what it would be is to show that they're subservient to them, or there's no ill will, or that they have no intentions of ever rising up. They would walk through it, right? So they would walk through it to show, I'm in service to you. I'm willing to split my livelihood and go through it in order to show you that I am willing to either serve you or at least not be attacked by you and overrun by you, that there's no intent of rebellion from you. So here's the thing, though. So it's a common practice that Abraham knows about at this point. But if we look at 17, typically it's the smaller that goes through. The person who sacrifices is the one that passes through. But instead, a smoking fire pot and flaming torch pass between these places. So we all know that the presence of God many times in the Bible shows up as fire, right? So here it is. Abraham sets it up, but the person that actually passes through it, the person that actually makes the show of, I'm going to do all the work, is God. The process of God shows through. So what this is he's showing from the very beginning, he's showing that he's going to do all of the work. He's going to show his love first. So we have this initial show. For me, it's this, proud as a peacock moment with my complete works. For God, it's him doing this sacrificial moment where he says that he's going to do all the work. So the next step in this, person making the first move when it comes to love is you need to separate, right? Just like the lions separate the gazelle from the herd, right? So I needed to separate my future spouse from all the guys in my house and all the girls in her house, right? So what I did is, here's my smooth, I have the best one ever to get this, right? So I'm walking around, keep it pictured, giant complete works of William Shakespeare, ornate, decorative leather belt. So I have the best move there, right? So what I say is, she comes back, she's got a laundry basket in her hands, and here I am, pacing around. I'm bored. You want to go watch a movie? Have you ever heard a better line than that? Right? That is, but here's the thing. I was separating, right? I was separating her out so I have a chance to make a move, right? And guys in the room, I know you can understand this. It's easier to make a move when it's just you and her versus you, her, and all her friends, right?
That's right.
John George down.
You preach it.
So, here's the thing. God does the same thing. So, if we look at Leviticus 20, 24, what I said to you, you shall inherit their land. I will give it to you to possess a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God who has separated you from the peoples. So God chooses a people. He says, I'm going to do all the work, and then he separates them out from the other people to let them, to be able to make his move, to be able to make sure that they know, this is how I'm going to show you that I love you. All right? Now, admittedly, God's line here is a little bit better than mine. I'm bored. Do you want to watch a movie? You know, I probably should have said something to the effect of, I'm going to give you a land flowing with milk and honey. But really, I didn't think that was in my resources. Then leads us to the last part of the actual making of the move, right? But it can't just be a move. Like, it's got to be a grand, massive, irreversible, no turning back move in which they know, you know, there's no way the friend zone is happening here, right? Right? So, God did this in the most massive, epic way, and the best verse to describe this is the verse that you all know, is probably the first one you memorized. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. So God's big, massive, irreversible, no turning back from this move is to sacrifice his Son for our sins. Right? This isn't new information for us. But at the same time, his grand gesture to make sure that we know he loves us and he's doing all the work to redeem a relationship that's been separated by sin and torment within our lives, showing that he's going to do all the work. He takes part of his own self, his holy trinity, his flesh, his own, and is willing to go through all the sacrifice of the crucifixion and the flogging and the pain and the torment. Do all of that as a sacrifice for us, to atone us, to bring us into his presence. He is the one that does all the work. So I know you're probably wondering, what was my grand irreversible moment? Right? So we're watching a movie. The movie was Big Fish, by the way. So we're watching a movie. It stars Ewan McGregor. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but it's a decent movie. It's not great, but. So we're watching a movie, and, well, see, the background behind it is Trista was an art major at the time, and Big Fish was really known for these grand, like, visuals and things like that. But anyway, so we're watching a movie. The movie wasn't really great, but, you know, it was a chance to, anyway. So we're watching the movie, and, through the course, I'm like, do a little scoot over move. You guys are all aware of this, right? And slowly, so by the end of the movie, the arms are round. Credits start rolling. And I'm like, all right, what do I do next? We've gotten here. I'm not good with words at this point. We've already proven that by I'm bored, do you want to watch a movie? So I just reach over and I grab her chin and I just plant it, right? I just go for it, go all in. To which the response was, for, I'm not kidding you, no less than a half hour afterwards of just, huh. That is all she said. She just repeated, huh, for 30 minutes. 30 minutes of just, huh. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, is that okay? Like, did I cross the line? Is this okay? Like, and she's like, huh. So anyway. So there has to be a moment where we make a decision that there's no turning back from. God's already done that with us. But the cool thing is that this then initiates this love cycle, right? It doesn't end there. There's no end to what's happening after this initial statement of, just displaying love or displaying affection or attraction or whatever. It can't end there because there's got to be a call and response to it. And I'm about to say the word response way too much, and I apologize in advance. But this cycle becomes of, there's this showing, and then there needs to be a response to that. And then the cool thing is the third part is there's a response to the response. Because let's face it, and again, I'm going to talk to the guys in the room. It's all cool if you like a girl, right? But it's not game on until you find out that she responded to you liking her, right? That's when the game starts. That's like, okay, yes. So we have to show, like, there's a show of love, then there's a response to that show, and then there's a response to the response. I told you I was going to say the word response way too many times. So here's the cool thing. So the Bible actually tells us how we're supposed to respond, right? So if we look at 2 Corinthians 5, starting 14, for Christ's love compels us because we are convinced that one died for all. This is the big grand act that we talked about. One died for all, and therefore all died. It was a representation of all of our sacrifice. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So, this is the key. If we're to respond to this lavish, extravagant, unreasonable amount of love that Christ has poured out for us, our only response is to follow him, to commit our lives to serving him. In fact, it says again here in next one. John 15. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends that if I command you. That's not the one I was thinking, but that's okay. 2 Corinthians 5 is what I was looking for. Sorry. For Christ's love compels us. It compels us. Other versions say controls us. Legitimately, we have no option whatsoever but to respond to his love. If we receive it, I mean, we can shirk it and turn it down. I know that's happened to me before. It's just Tristan didn't do it in this story, but other stories end not as happily. We have a choice whether we receive it, but if we do receive it, we have no option then afterwards than to serve him. We are set up in a spot where we are to give our lives to him, and that is what this whole day is about, is to say thank you to all of you for responding to God's love.
Yes.
To say, I'm going to serve him. I'm going to work in ministry. I'm going to volunteer in a children's ministry. I'm going to work at a kids camp all summer long and make very little money and be exhausted.
Yes.
But you have chosen at some point in time or another to serve in a way. You know, I know we've got a lot of teachers in the room, or past teachers, you know, serving those students in your classroom. You have chosen to not only accept God's love, but to live your life in a way that serves him and gives your life over to him. Other places in the Bible say that to serve him is to serve others. And you have chosen to do that. And I want to say thank you. Thank you. That is the whole point of today, to just say thank you. Now let's look at John 15. All right. This is the one I hit on accidentally. So this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. So, if he loves us, we're supposed to love other people. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do as I command. If we jump ahead then to verse 15. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends.
Yes.
You're friends with Christ.
Yes.
For all that I have, all that I've heard from my Father, I have made known to you.
Yes.
You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give to you. So here's the key. This verse gives us two promises. You know, we hear all this talk about biblical promises, and I won't lie to you, a lot of times I'm like, what are the promises? I don't know. But there are two biblical promises here that Jesus gives us, because this is Jesus talking to his disciples, right? So promise number one, God's plans will be made known to you. Here's the thing. It doesn't say that you'll know exactly how things are going to go. It doesn't say that you're always going to like the volunteers that you're working with in ministry. It doesn't say anything like that, but it says his plans will be made known to you. And it may be as small as just a vision that you've been given. You've all been given a passion in your heart. You've all been given a vision at some point in time to lead the people that you're leading, to serve the people that you're leading. You have been given some sort of focus or key that has put you on the path that you're going on. That has been given to you by God because of your decision to respond to his love. That's his response to your response. You have something in your life that is directing you on a path, because otherwise, where are you at and where are you going? God's put something there. In Psalms it talks about, man plots the course, but the Lord determines his steps. It doesn't mean that you're going to know every single step. There's going to be things that happen that you don't know. You're probably going to be stressed. You're probably going to be frustrated. Things are not going to go the way you want.
That's right.
But the Lord's plans have been made known to you. It is a biblical promise you can stand on. You can know that the decisions that you are making, the places where you are going there because God has set that before you. Promise number 2. You will bear fruit. It says it right there. If you abide in me, you will bear fruit. Now, it doesn't say that you'll see the fruit. It doesn't say that you will taste the fruit. It doesn't say that you'll even know that the fruit ever happens. But you will bear fruit. By abiding in God, you will bear fruit. Now, I know that some of you may be 20 years into your ministry. You may be just starting out. You may have been through all these ups and downs, and you may be thinking that all of it was for nothing. But the truth is, that's not the promise you're standing on. You will bear fruit. Here's the thing. We think about, there's a planting time and a harvest time. And a lot of times with crops like corn or things like that, you plant and you put a seed in the ground in the spring, and in the fall you've got that fruit, right? Corn or an apple tree only takes 4 to 8 years. If there was 4 to 8 years to see fruit within a ministry, that would be awesome, right? Anybody who's starting a ministry from scratch or feels like they're starting a ministry from scratch, 4 to 8 years would make you feel ecstatic. But here's the thing. How many of you guys know of the Sequoia National Forest? The giant trees. There's the one, the most famous is probably the one that you can drive through. They're so big. Those are big trees that last forever, right? Here's the thing. The way that those produce fruit is they have little pine cones that have the seeds in them, right? Because we all know that to actually know if there's fruit is when other seeds are able to be planted, right? That's how it works within our ministry. So, here's the thing. With these redwood sequoias, it can take up to 200 years when those seeds are planted for that tree to mature enough to produce those fine cones with seeds to 200 years. But the promise is still there that you will bear fruit. So, as we're obedient to God, we can stand on these promises. And one, that we know God's plans. We may not know all of it. We may only know a snippet, but we know what we need to know to be able to serve him. And we will bear fruit from them. Those are huge, big promises for us to stand on. So what I want to do now here, this is a time where we're going to open it up, all right? If you look through your little schedule there, it said sharing of stories. And what this is I want to hear from the people in this room. I want to hear how you've experienced God's love. Or I want to hear a story of what crazy thing that you have done in response to God's love. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to be as crazy as much as moving from Indianapolis, Indiana, all the way back to Mississippi. But, no, just kidding. Everybody has these great stories. And I want to hear that, because the reality of this day is I want everybody to learn and grow from each other. So we're going to open this up. We're going to open some time for you guys to share how you've experienced God's love, some of the crazy things you've done. I want to hear about plans that you've started that have failed massively, but you were trying to follow God. I want to know what you learned from them. I want to know the plans that you started and took off, and you've seen massive amounts of fruit. We want to hear how you know God's promises of the plans He has for you. We want to hear how you are seeing fruit, and we also want to know how you have experienced God's love in your life, what your responses were. So we're going to open up. It's going to be super casual. You can come up here and talk if you want. I think we're small enough room to where everybody's going to be able to hear everybody. If not, we'll get a microphone to you if we're having trouble hearing. But I just want to open it up and let it go from there. You can stand where you are, come up here, do whatever. Okay? Good? All right. Let's